The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Alan Blumkin. I'm here with my good friend David Nemec, and we're discussing today managers that are in the Hall of Fame, and as managers, and managers that we feel should be but aren't. Welcome, David.
Pleasure to be with you again, Al.
It's always a pleasure. Okay, so you want to start with the Hall of Fame managers?
Well, we can. Or we can just intermingle them, and
okay.
As a name comes up, we can explore them and talk about them. But go ahead, pick a guy, and let's do it.
Well, as a piece of trivia, there are only two managers that managed after they were elected to the Hall of Fame. The first one is Connie Mack, and the second one is Tony La Russa.
That is good. I would have thought of La Russa pretty quickly, but I didn't realize they were the only two.
Well, Connie Mack owned the team, so he didn't fire himself.
Yeah,
but Connie Mack actually played ball in the 19th century. I think it was primarily with Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Pittsburgh, and he was in the Players League. He started with Washington, which had terrible teams in the 80s, and they moved to the Players League, which had the last place team, Buffalo, and he was with them. And then he was with Pittsburgh, and he had some pretty bad Pittsburgh teams he was on too. Never won a pennant in the 19th century, and then ended up in the Western League, and he did pretty well there, and ended up then as the first manager of the Philadelphia A's in 1901, and that became his haven for the rest of his life. He was part owner and manager of the team. It seemed like he'd go on for eons, and it almost seems to some people that he did.
Well, he managed for 50 years and had great successes and great failures. In fact, the whole history of the A's, I think we've discussed before, is most of the time they've either very, very good or very, very bad. There's not that much mediocrity in their history. And he put together his first dynasty, the dynasty that ran from 1910 to 1914, which was, they won the World Series of 1910, 11, and 13, and then it was swept by the Boston Braves in 1914, and he broke up the team because I feel because of the competition with the Federal League. He wasn't going to pay money. Yeah,
that was his history all throughout his career.
Yeah, and directly, he gave Eddie Collins a big contract for the time, an extraordinarily big contract for the time, and that sent to the White Sox.
He was stuck with that contract, and that I think is partly what caused the
Black Sox
scandal, because Collins was so high paid, and Comiskey, who took Mack or Collins off Mack's hands, found himself cash poor. I think he would have paid his players more if he could have, because he paid when he managed player manager of the Browns and player manager of the Cincinnati team in the 1890s. He wasn't a guy who he thought his players should be paid what they were worth. But Collins pretty much broke the bank as far as he was concerned, and took a lot of. Collins was very unpopular, of course, with his teammates as a result of it.
Yeah, and the A's went into the sewer basically for the next dozen years or so. They were the 1916 and 1919 teams are two of the worst of all time. In fact, there's a book I read a couple of years ago on the 1916 A's who won 36 games, called as bad as it gets. And I did a little piece on Facebook about the 52 Pirates last week. And the manager of the 52 Pirates was a man named Billy Meyer. Pirates that year won 42-112. Billy Meyer was a catcher of the 1916 A's.
Yeah.
And they didn't become, sometime in the early 20s, after Harry Frazee unloaded all the Red Sox players, most of whom went to the Yankees, took over the bottom in the American League. The A's were the doormats, and then he finally put together a team that won in the pennants in 1929, 30, and 31. And after the Depression hit, he got rid of all of them.
Wow. Yeah.
And the team went basically into the sewer for the rest of his time there.
Yeah.
Except for a couple of aberrations like 1948 and 1952.
Yeah. Yeah, but 48. Yeah, they were actually contenders in 48 for a while, and gave the illusion that they might have potential to be a first division team for more than a year or two. But that didn't happen.
I don't blame the whole the flop in the 30s on him all that much, because the Pennsylvania didn't have any Sunday ball until 1934.
Yeah.
There was no night ball. There was almost no broadcast revenue. So they're totally dependent on ticket sales and concessions. And during the Depression, not many people had the money to go to ball games on a consistent basis.
So I would say of those people who made it largely because of their being managers, his overall winning percentage, I would say, is the lowest, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's under 500.
It's like Bucky Harris might be below 500 too. I don't know. I haven't looked at him lately, but if anyone would be, they would be. But there are two guys who managed teams that played 750 or better ball to pennants. And both are in the 19th century, of course, because we got teams didn't play like that in the 20th century unless you knew about them. But there were two teams, and their managers are obscure figures today to most people. One managed for 9 years and had only one season below 500, and that was in 1890 when the Players League affected his New York Giants. They took most of the better players on the Giants, which won pennants in the National League in 88 and 89.
Was that Muttrey?
That was Muttrey, yeah. And Muttrey had a 750 team in 86 and didn't win, and 85 and didn't win the pennant. And Muttrey also managed New York Mets in 84 to a pennant in the American Association. So Muttrey had always had good teams, put together good teams, but has never been considered for the Hall of Fame. And there's one particular reason for it, and that's because in 1891, Arthur Irwin, who was a player manager at that time in the National League and also in the American Association, a shortstop and a good one, made a very strong case that Muttrey and the Philadelphia team, and probably the definitely the Philadelphia team, and maybe even the Pittsburgh team, conspired to throw the pennant to Boston in 1891. And he made a very strong case. Anson was convinced. Anson took it up the line as far as he could. He was player manager of the Chicago team. And it was thrown to the Boston because Boston refused. Boston was willing to refuse to play the winner of the American Association, which was also the Boston Reds. another rival team in Boston that year in the association for that 1 year only in an AA and NL World Series, which had been continuous since '84. The Boston manager, Frank Salee, and the owner Arthur Soden agreed that Boston would not play in that series, and that would kill the World Series and ultimately kill the AA. Whereas the Chicago team, which was in first place and a very, very strong favorite to take the pennant, before the pennant was thrown, largely by the Giants' failure in a number of late season games to even field a decent team when they played Boston. Mucci was roped into that, so it seems anyway, and Irwin thought so, and that black mark against him kept him from making the Hall of Fame, in my estimation. And he never. I don't even know if he ever got a single vote.
Yeah, the Charles Alexander book, Turbulent Seasons, which discusses in depth 1890 and 1891, did a very, very nice job of explaining that.
Yeah.
That
was he did. That was an excellent explanation. But and the other
isn't Irwin the one who had two families and jumped into the river?
Well, so it seems. No one ever proved it. Nobody was ever found, and there was a player who testified, and I think under oath, that he ran into Arthur or somewhere in the South years after he was reportedly lost at sea or drowned, deliberately jumped overboard and drowned because he had terminal cancer. But there were so many questions about that death and the suspicions and double family that and Irwin was a very, very bright guy. Irwin invented the football scoreboard. He did all kinds of crazy stuff. He wore a glove. He was one of the first infielders to wear a glove regularly. He was an innovator. He was a good manager and a very good player. He would be a marginal Hall of Famer, definitely. I think if it hadn't been for his suspicious death, and also probably for his activity in 1891 and his accusations against the National League.
Yeah, who was the other manager you were referring to?
The other manager I'm looking at is Frank Bancroft, who was really a good baseball man in the National League and the American Association, a very strong figure. And,
didn't he manage Providence with Radbourne?
Yeah, he managed Radbourne. He managed a very difficult team to manage. He had Radbourne, Charlie Sweeney, a couple of other guys who were difficult to work with, and he managed them to the pennant in the first World Series victory over the American Association in '84. He was a good manager in '83 with Cleveland, and Cleveland was decimated in '84, and Bancroft could see it coming. And when the Union Association pilfered three of Cleveland's best players. So when he saw it coming, when the Union Association formed and realized Cleveland wasn't going to stay a strong team, and jumped to Providence and took over that club and took them to the pennant. But he was a figure in the front office of the Reds for a number of years. He even briefly managed the Reds in 1902, and was definitely a player's manager. The players liked him, and and he was a very good manager. He handled players very well.
Well, it took the Hall of Fame forever to put in Frank Seeley and Ned Hanlon.
Yeah. So Lee had not been a player. And,
that I know.
But he came in through. But you're right, Hanlon was a good player. But Hanlon has some strikes against him too that don't really, they haven't really gotten much attention. Hanlon managed Baltimore, I think in '91 or '92, and Baltimore had a terrible team. And on the team was a guy named Jocko Halligan, and Halligan punched out a teammate, Cub Stricker, and broke Stricker's jaw in a fight over a poker game. he claimed that Stricker called him a name that no man should ever call another man, and broke his jaw in the fight. And Hanlon immediately suspended Halligan and established an unofficial and informal blacklist that kept Halligan out of ever playing Major League Ball again. Not a single game. He had no blacklist. He never appears on a Major League blacklist, but it was an undercurrent and an unwritten rule that no Major League team was ever again to hire Halligan. And he could have come back into the American League, which didn't honor the National League blacklist in 1901, if Van Johnson had chosen to go against it. Because Halligan had played in the American League in 1900 as a minor league. And Halligan did pretty well enough to be taken on by an American League team when it declared itself major. Johnson declared a major in 1901, but no team would touch him. Johnson wouldn't let any team touch him. So Halligan spent the rest of his career, and he was reinstated in the late 90s by a guy named Shannon, and then Dan Shannon, an infielder who was then a manager in the minor leagues. Shannon took him on a minor league team. I think it was Jersey City, if I'm not mistaken. I could be. In 98, Halligan was given a job by Shannon and finished out his career in the minors and played respectable ball. He's a good ball player deep into his 30s, but never again appeared in a major league game after that unofficial blacklist went into effect. And I think that was some players definitely held that against Hanlon. I don't know if the brass did. I don't know the 30s thinking when the Hall of Fame was established thoroughly enough as to what players, what managers, what front office people should be blacklisted, if any, from being in the Hall of Fame. But something worked against Hanlon for a number of years because his qualifications as a manager in the 1890s with Baltimore were terrific. And they continued to be terrific after he took over the Brooklyn club in '99. He won the pennant in '99, and
that was the syndication. Same owners bought Brooklyn, and they moved the bulk of the Orioles to Brooklyn.
Yeah, there was no other man. He won 5 pennants. I think 5. Yeah. And
Seeley won 5.
Seeley won 5 too. There's 2 guys with 5 pennants.
Yeah, and Seeley was managing the Cubs in the early 1900s when they started to get good, and a chance took over because Seeley, I think, had health problems.
Yeah, it puzzled me that neither of them was in the Hall of Fame for until fairly recently. Really, it didn't happen till long after. Anybody who really was familiar with their work as manager, in
1984, I think it was, they put in Tom Yorkie, who was a drunk, a racist, and this team's never won a World Series, and it took them 100 years to put in Jacob Rupert, who was the only when the Yankee dynasty started.
I know. It made no sense at all. Not that Rupert was a great choice either, but at least Rupert was a respectable choice and one you could defend.
Yeah.
Yorkie had no you couldn't post.
I think Yorkie gave a lot of money to them. That's why they put him in.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think you're exactly right. Yeah, but getting back to guys who should be in the Hall of Fame for their managerial work, and one who was a player and an excellent player, he wouldn't have made it solely as a player, but combine his managerial work and his playing work and his general contributions to baseball, it amazes me that nobody mounts any kind of a case at all anymore for Charlie Grimm, who, to my mind, was one of the leading baseball figures of the 30s and 40s and the 50s. It puzzles me still why, these veterans committees and so forth that form and vote one guy in. They vote people like Hank O'Day in. And they don't vote people like Charlie Grimm in. It just amazes me.
No, Charlie Grimm, he managed 3 of the Club pennant winners during that time.
Yeah.
I think we managed them in 32 and 35 and 45, I think, over the 3 seasons.
Yeah, the only thing against him was that he didn't win a World Series with any of these teams.
Well, neither did Al Lopez.
No, neither did Al Lopez. And Lopez, to my mind, he was a better than mediocre manager, but he was certainly no, dugout genius. And there were certain better managers in Lopez's time who, if they had managed his teams, probably would have won a pennant or two more than he did.
Now you've got the managers like Leo DeRocha, who won once, Earl Weaver, who won once, Bobby Cox, who won once.
Well, they did manage a lot of pennant winners.
I know, yeah. Well, DeRocha only managed 3, 41, 51, and 54. That's it.
Well, that's true. That's true. He would have managed 47 if he hadn't been suspended for a year. Probably would have. I don't think they would have lost under DeRocha. But, Schotten, I don't think Schotten was a great manager. But everything fell right for Brooklyn that year except DeRocha being suspended. Maybe that was for the best. I don't know. But,
one of the ones I think belonged. I was hoping that he was on the ballot the last time the veterans voted. Was Danny Murtaugh.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And no question about him.
And,
I don't understand it. Why? Do you understand why he doesn't get any support?
Who?
Murtaugh. Why he doesn't get?
I don't know. Maybe because of two apart. All the old players. Because when I interviewed Dick Roque, God, that's next month will be 38 years since I did that. It was in 1985, and he had nothing but praise for Murtaugh.
Yeah, everybody who played for him I've ever talked to, or even others I've talked to have said the same thing. Yeah, he's a great manager.
I asked Dick what Murtaugh said after they got blown out in for the second straight game and the third game in 1960 World Series. And he said, Murtaugh said, gentlemen, we're down 2-1. They don't pay off in how many runs you win or lose by. Yeah. I said that they went out there in Game 4 with a fairly positive attitude. They won that game.
And Murtaugh also had a good reputation as a player. Yeah. He wasn't a great player. He wasn't an all-star second baseman, but he was a respectable player and a good teammate. So there's no strikes against him, none. One who came across
is you probably know a lot more than I do about this one. Bill Carrigan.
Yeah, he won 2 straight World Series. And no one else who won 2 straight World Series has failed to make the Hall of Fame.
Ralph Houck isn't in.
Did Houck win 2 straight series?
1961 and 62, and Cito Gaston with Toronto won 1992 and 1993. I don't think he's managed since.
No, he hasn't. I don't. That's on. Yeah, there's been no comment on what happened to Gaston.
I have no idea. Nobody. I don't have any idea.
Yeah, why was he dumped after two consecutive wins? I don't know. Yeah, so how could he do better than what he did? I mean, who could have done better with that team? I mean, it's and what is
Houck, of course. They kicked him upstairs to general manager.
Yeah.
After 1963, he fired Yogi after 1964. After they won a pennant in 1964, when the team fell apart in 1965, he came back to manage in 1966 and managed the Red Sox and Tigers after that, and he never came close to winning anything again.
Well, that I think was held against him. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So everybody won with anybody could win with the Yankees, it seemed, and
all the players who loved Houck as a manager. Jim Bouton wrote about this in Ball 4 when he became a general manager. He was he was out of the George Weiss School.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they all hated him. Yeah, as a general manager.
I was pretty well forced to play that role. I mean, I don't think
Bowden said in his book that Bowden in 1963 won 21 games. He was 21-7. He asked for the whopping sum of $20,000. That was only his second year, and how when spring training came and he was still unsigned, Houck threatened to fine him $500 a day for every day of spring training he missed. So he finally settled for $18,000.
Oh God!
Which is,
yeah. Well, I didn't think about that. You're right that there are three guys who won back-to-back World Series who are not in the Hall of Fame. Three managers who did that. I neglected to include Gaston, and Gaston really a puzzle.
Yeah.
I mean, has anyone ever written about him or talked to him?
Not as far as I know. I've never seen anything on it.
No, it's like a hidden story. And there's got to be somebody who talked to him. I would think, with all the people we know who interview ex managers and ex players. I mean, somebody must.
Maybe somebody wrote his biography on Sabre website. I'll check that.
Yeah.
Another one I want to ask you about was Pat Moran.
Pat Moran was a great manager, and he died. Yeah, he died. He really had trouble with the bottle, but he managed the 15 Phillies to their first pennant as a franchise history, and he managed the 19 Reds to their first pennant since their initial year in the American Association, 1882. It was their first pennant in the National League. So, how many guys managed the first pennant won by two teams in the National League? I don't that aren't in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he died very young, and he probably would have gone on managing longer. But he also had a respectable catcher, had a pretty good playing career. So that's one who's really forgotten, and I know that he was a good catcher, a heady catcher, and certainly he was a guy that got the most out of his players. He handled some pretty tough players, and the Phillies had gotten rid of potentially their best player after the 14th season.
Well, Sherry McGee.
Yeah, McGee. So he didn't have Sherry McGee in 1915, and he still won the pennant. And it's tough to say why he's not better remembered today. I don't know that his overall career. Well, I certainly as good a candidate. I think it's Kerrigan, and Kerrigan didn't manage that long either. He gave when he came back with the terrible Boston teams in the 20s, but. That kind of wiped away the memory of his 2 World Series victories in a row. But Moran, I don't know of any strikes against him, except that he had a short career as a manager. But otherwise, he had a very strong career. So
another one that 1-2 pants that isn't. I'm not bring up Bruce Bochy or any of the current or Jim Leland or any of the. The recent managers who, have still eventually will be considered was, as you alluded to before, was kindly old Bart Shotton, who won 47 with the Dodgers and 49 with the Dodgers. Yeah. But the Dodgers got rid of him after 1950 because he was Ricky's man, and when O'Malley bought the team out, bought Ricky out after 1950, he got rid of everybody who had the remotest association with Ricky, who didn't swear loyalty to O'Malley. Yeah. So, but Shotton by that time was very, very old. How about another one that won 2 pennants as a manager nobody talks about? 2 pennants of 1 World Series is Gabby Street.
Yeah, he's totally forgotten. Totally.
The only thing anybody remembers him is that when I think Walter Johnson threw a baseball from the top of the Washington Monument, that street caught it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I just looked up something. Gaston has been written about, and apparently what finished him was supposedly not developing good relationships with modern players. And Gaston did say, he hinted also that racism was a factor. He wrote a qualified apology apparently, but when he lost his job, he did manage the team until the 97 season was almost finished. I don't know that that's true. I don't see how he could have won 2 World Series and overall had a winning record and be totally forgotten among candidates for something about his managing. When he won those pennants must have been working for him with the younger players, because he did win and he had tough competition. It wasn't as if he romped the pennants with a team that was that much stronger than the rest of the pack. So I don't know. It's still, I think there's a puzzle there that really.
Well, you ask quite a number of baseball fans. You mention his name, they'll give they'll shake their head and who? Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
It's only like people like us that.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, and I think Gaston may still be employed by the Blue Jays. I don't know. He worked with the front office at least for quite a while, and I don't know. As far as I know, he had a lot. And he was a pretty good player. I mean, he wasn't.
Yeah, he was decent. Yeah. Yeah,
he was decent. Not much more than decent, but he was a respectable player, and he played most of his career in a time when hitting was at its nadir in the modern era. I mean, he did have one full season where he hit 318 and 907 OPS, but never came close to that again. I don't know what it was. 1970, jumps out as if he was.
In 1970, a number of players like Jim Hickman, that was the Cubs had a career year.
Well,
There's something going on that year. Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
There was something going on that year, and I thought about Hickman. I always wondered. And Gaston had a pretty good. He didn't. No, 1969 he had 230. And in 71, he had 228. Yes, and then he hit almost 100 points higher in 1970. It was like it came out of nowhere and then went to nowhere. I mean, he never again really. I don't know what happened that year, and it's a puzzle. Yeah, it's really, but the managers. I don't know about the current crop of managers. Well, Bochy, I think, it's a lot.
Bochy has 4 pennants because he won from 1998 with San Diego.
Yeah,
they were swept by the Yankees in 4 games, and then he won 3 with the Giants. Terry Francona is possible.
I think Francona, because at the length of his career and what he did with Boston, he's pretty much of a lock to make the Hall of Fame. And he had a fairly good. He was a decent ball player too, and his father was a memorable player. His father was never a manager, I don't think.
No.
But and Francona is very, very popular in Cleveland.
Well, obviously, I mean, they won the division last year with they were not expected to do anything.
Yeah, no, and they have a very young team. What they'll do with it, I don't know. Most of those guys are going to go elsewhere as soon as they're free to leave Cleveland, because Cleveland is just not willing to pay for what they've got. And what players are making now and the contracts,
No, let's not get into that. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, the anti-manager is Gene Mark.
Yeah, and that's too bad because he kind of threw away the pennant in '64.
Yeah, he blew that. They blew a 3-2 lead. They blew it in the 1982 LCS was managing the Angels. They blew the last 2 games to Milwaukee. And then in 1986, he's still managing the Angels. They blew that to the Red Sox.
Yeah.
And then he was the manager when the 1961 Phillies lost 23 in a row. And then he was the manager in the 1969 Expos when they lost 20 in a row.
I know. He has a lot of black marks on his record, and it's unfortunate.
There was one time that Sports Illustrated wanted to do an article on him, and he refused to talk about 1964, so they killed the article.
Well, he actually refused to talk about it.
Yeah, because we had we had the 1997 convention in Louisville, and the keynote speaker was Jim Bunning, and he went very heavily into 1964. He says, says between him and Chris Short, their arms are ready to fall off.
Yeah, I can believe it. Yeah.
But managers. I had a debate with somebody on Facebook about Charlie Dressen, who also won 2 pennants straight, but no World Series in '52 and '53. But he'll live forever, and he's a total egomaniac.
Yeah,
he took credit for everything that went well, and he blew the '51 pennant by his use of the way he used pitchers, and I put down that they won in '52 and '53 the National League pennant despite him.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I really. I never considered him as a kid. I never heard anybody talk about him among the better managers even then.
No, they went to Washington
every year
when they were terrible, and then they went to Milwaukee. And then he went to Detroit, and he wasn't successful at any of those places at all. He was part of the Good Old Boy Network, with Bertie Tebbetts and several others who would get hired every time somebody got fired somewhere. Never won anything.
I don't think Tebbetts was a bad manager. He just never he could never sustain it for a full season with a team. Something would always happen, and I think if you look at his record, I haven't looked at it that thoroughly, but I suspect you'll find that a lot of his teams at the All-Star break were doing very well and suffered a slump in the second half of the season, or at least dropped off noticeably. And because I know that I seem to just remember, just from my own observations, that most of his teams did very, very well up until the All-Star break, and some even well beyond. But none of them seemed to do well toward the end of the season.
Well, his closest,
I don't know whether it was his fault or whether he just.
His closest was the 1956 Reds, who lost by 2 games and finished in third.
Yeah.
But they had 221 home runs, which tied the record at that time, and but their pitching was awful. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think I've made this point quite a few times. I think Joe McCarthy was very overrated.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And my favorite Yankee manager of all time is still, even though people still get on about him the way he managed the 1960 World Series. I think he was the greatest manager I've ever seen. Still.
Yeah. No, he did. They weren't that strong in some years, and he's always right in the thick of it. Even in the season he didn't win, he finished well up there. he never had a really bad season.
No, the worst of his 12 years with the Yankees was 1959 when they won 79 games.
Yeah.
They had a lot of injuries, and they had Skowron missed half the season with a broken wrist, and Sturtevant and Cooks, were basically gone.
Yeah.
Because the Yankees after Rashy Reynolds and Lopat were gone, it was Whitey Ford and a whole bunch of pitchers that had 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, Stafford and guys like that.
Well, in 1958, Bob Turley was 21-7, was a hero of the World Series, won the Cy Young Award, and the next year and for the rest of his career couldn't do anything.
No, yeah. A guy from that period who I think might have gone on to do great things had he lived was Fred Hutchison.
Yeah.
And he took the 61 Reds, who nobody thought would even be in mild contention, and they to that team to the pennant, and then very soon thereafter, I mean, it was clear that he had incurable lung cancer, and he wasn't going to be around much longer with us and it was unfortunate. And another guy in the same category who died very young and was, I think, a very good manager.
Dick Hauser?
Dick Hauser, my former high school teammate, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know he was...
Yeah,
went to high school with him? Wow.
Yeah, he was a senior when I was a sophomore at Palm Beach High, and they were defending state champs. In the senior year, he hit in the 190s in high school. And he was converted from shortstop to second base because they had a better guy on the team. Even though they were defending state champs, he was converted to second base because he didn't have the arm for short. But he bulked up and he grew 2 inches over the summer between his senior year of high school and his freshman year at Florida State. He came on as a walk-on, total walk-on, and he wore cut-off jeans and a cut-off sweatshirt sleeves to his first tryout as a freshman. And Danny Litweiler was the coach, former Philly and
I remember him from the card in the 51 Bowman set.
And Litweiler didn't know even who the hell he was. All he knew, what Litweiler knew about him was he was Burt Reynolds' roommate.
No.
And and Reynolds, Hauser walked on and got attention right away, and Litweiler even debated whether to play him as a freshman and use up a year of eligibility, because freshmen were, I think they only got 3 years of eligibility, and they could use it as freshmen then, at least at Florida State, because Florida State was not a powerhouse school in any sport at that time. But Hauser made it a powerhouse school in baseball, and did very well, and got a bonus contract, and he went to the Kansas City signed him to a bonus contract of all teams.
Well, he managed the Yankees in 1980 and won 100 games.
Exactly. Yeah, and he was a good manager all the way through his very short career, and
they fired Steinbrenner fired him right after that because they lost the LCS to the Royals.
Yeah. Hauser talked about that firing and how he attended it. And Steinbrenner's speech said, Dick is retiring now he has some really hot real estate holdings, and he's going to devote his time full-time to real estate. And Hauser's eyes just went up. And sports writers looked at him, and he just kept raising his eyebrows higher and higher toward the ceiling. And they just laughed. And, apparently unfortunately, I hadn't seen how he had lunch with Hauser once after high school. That was in the A's in his rookie year when he came to Cleveland. But and I was living in Cleveland then. But Hauser was a great. I think he was a great manager. And he was a great manager even in high school, because I played first base and I played second, and he played second. And I didn't get to play with him in many varsity games because I played almost no varsity games. But in scrimmage games, and he'd be beside me, and he'd be telling me where to play everybody. Move over there, move over there, move over there. He can hit the right field. He'll do this. And these are our own teammates he's seen him in action. he studied them all. He knew what their strengths and weaknesses all were, and he moved me around. He moved the kid at shortstop around too, and he was very, very. He was a great coach even in high school. We had a terrible coach, a guy named Red Whittington, but who knew football but not baseball, and that's the way it was in high school. For most of us who went to high school and played baseball, you got a football coach.
Another one I should mention, even though he's still incredibly controversial, and because of his own demons, he never got never got the recognition he should have gotten, as Billy Martin.
Absolutely, yeah. Billy,
but he had his own demons. He got fired every place he went to. The Yankees had him 5 times, and it was really, really sad the way he wound up getting killed when his truck crashed.
Yeah, I know.
Crashed on Christmas Day in 1989, and he just had all these tremendous demons, and George Steinbrenner, when he's with the Yankees, played him like a drum.
They hated him in Oakland, though, because he
ruined the pitches.
Yeah, really ruined that staff. None of them really had much after that year. That fantastic year that they had for half a season, really. And the second half of the season, they were already flagging. When the season was in 2 parts that year.
No, that season was in 2 parts in 81.
Yeah.
80 went through the whole thing. And
81's when the show.
Kansas City beat them out for the division and wound up winning the pennant that year.
Yeah, that's right.
Jim Fry as a manager.
Yeah. Jim Fry. God, that's a forgotten name, man.
Yeah, I go through lists every so often to, these people to refresh my memory.
So Hauser took the job from Fry. That's right. Yeah, I remember. Yeah. Did Fry ever manage in the majors again? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I know he managed the Cubs for a while. Yeah.
Did he? Okay.
Yeah.
God, the Cubs had almost everybody as a manager.
Well, he can't talk a whole hour on the College of Coaches.
Yeah, that was an interesting experiment, though.
It was idiotic. It was one of those. I put down. Somebody brought that up on Facebook. I put one of the dumbest ideas in the history of baseball. In fact, Dick Rowe told me that when Lou Brock came to the Cardinals in 1964, and all of a sudden he became a terror after spending 2.5 years with the Cubs. And they says the team players asked him what happened. He says they had me so confused I didn't know which way was up.
Yeah, God, amazing.
Okay, we can continue this discussion maybe at the next time.
Yeah, this was fun.
But
I learned a lot.
So I learned a lot also.
Yeah, this has been enjoyable. Yeah.
That's all.
As I said, this is very enjoyable. Yeah, really. Yeah.
I think it's therapy for both of us.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm very glad once again to have done it with you, and it's been a real.
Same here. It's very educational. Give my best to Marilyn.
I will.
I'll call you in a few days, and good luck with what you have to do.
Yep, we'll do what we have to do, and thank you again, Al. Once again.
Okay, you're welcome. Take care. Good night.
The proceeding has been a comfortably zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.